This is Matt Brown, and you're listening to Just a Good Conversation. Almost 30 years ago, my father, Thomas Brown, bought me a book by a Texas photographer named Wyman Meinzer. Wyman is a cowboy, a fur trader, a pilot, a husband, an outdoorsman, storyteller, father, marksman, a conservationist, an author, and a photographer, and most of all, a West Texan. He is full of life and has a passion for everything he does.
Every day when I wake, I'm thinking, what can I do today that's going to be an adventure? No matter how small it is, if it's a major life changer, I just want to be able to accomplish something by the end of the day.
I'm Matt Brown, host of Just a Good Conversation. Take a listen to our archives. My guests have ranged from doctors, farmers, and one of the greatest basketball players of all time, Denise Curry.
84. I grew up really Northern California. I go to school in Los Angeles. The Olympics are in Los Angeles. I make the team. We win the gold medal. So my family's all here. Some of my best friends are there. Some of my teammates and classmates from UCLA are working the Olympics. I mean, it's really cool because so many people are so important to me and so influential in my life and for me getting to where I was. We're there. So it was really awesome to get to share that with everybody.
Go to justagoodconversation.com for all our archives. Let's take a quick break for a sponsor before diving into my conversation with Wyman Meinzer. I have been looking forward to this conversation for a very, very long time. Wyman, how are you, sir?
I'm doing quite well, man. How are you?
Oh, you're doing more than quite well, sir. You are doing far more than quite well. You're a living legend who I can't believe I get to talk to on a podcast.
Well, you're very kind.
Like we talked about before we hit the record button, your story is, I don't know, not what the normal person in America would think, growing up would be like. You're from West Texas. You're a world-renowned photographer. You're in a part of the country a lot of people don't realize, because where you're at in West Texas, it's not, and you know this, we'll talk about it. It's got the most region of any part of Texas. My dad grew up there, and he would always say West Texas is where the Rocky Mountains got tired and stopped.
That's about right.
Right? So what was it like for a young boy growing up in Texas?
Oh, it was fantastic. Having my dad was a foreman. I'm sorry about that little dinging. It's coming up on the computer, these ads and stuff. My dad was a foreman on a 27,000 acre ranch, and I grew up as a cowboy. It was just kind of, I rode horses, I broke horses, and we worked cattle, and then I went off to college after high school, and at Texas Tech, and since I was really into hunting very heavily, I decided that I would try to get a degree in wildlife biology, and I did.
Now, did Dad influence you with hunting? Was that something that was around?
No, my dad didn't even hunt. He I don't even know if he owned a 22, and that was it.
Okay.
So we got it actually from my mother's dad. He was a big hunter back in the Depression years and a trapper.
Okay.
And so I guess that's where that genetic connection came from. But
from mom's side.
From mom's side, and she didn't like hunting. My mother didn't care for it,
okay.
And my brother really picked it up. But anyway, and then once at school in college, I was able to attain a grant to do some research, a year's worth of research on coyote dietary habits, and I was loaned a camera by my major professor, Dr. Darrell N. Eckert. He said, document some data for us. And wow, he told me, he said, there's some Kodachrome down in the wildlife lab, so go down there and get you a few rolls. And man, I mean, once I saw that stuff come back, I'm going, I like this.
But that's got to be tough though. Like here's a camera and go document. That's, what was the camera? Do you even remember?
Well, yeah, it was a little Argus, one of those Argus R3s or something like that, little twin lens jobs. You focus, you compose in one and you focus with the other. And, but it shot, reasonably good images and a lot better than I had at the time. I had a little $7, 127 out of Sears and Roebuck. And so I just began shooting, and color, light always fascinated me. And so I would find myself, doing a lot of sky stuff along with documenting data because I had to eventually give the results of my paper at the international meeting for the Society of Range Management in Tucson, Arizona, my senior year. And I had those were the images that I created during that research period with that Argus camera.
Right.
And so once I got out of school, or right before I graduated, when I had to give that camera back, I purchased a little Canon TL and with a 1.8 50 millimeter lens and shot with it for a while. And then there was a stint there in 1975. I worked for the Forest Department in Santa Fe, New Mexico for a couple of months. And I just decided at that point, you know what, I think I want to get published.
Now that's a real bug to get from, doing from research, and you're trying to figure out shutter speeds and apertures and what this all means. And you've got Ektachrome, which is pretty, tough to work with, to deciding wow, this is stirring something up in me.
Yeah. I was shooting Kodachrome 25 and 64.
Oh my
God. And so, I learned pretty quickly that the magazines weren't too interested in what I had, and so that sort of really energized me, if I may. And I worked for a couple more years, real hard, and kept submitting. And finally, in 1979, 4 years later, I began to be published in the Nationals and State magazine, Texas Parks and Wildlife. But it's kind of funny because. Most people will start out shooting state and regional, but I immediately started submitting to the Nationals, Sports Afield, Field and Stream, Outdoor Life, Smithsonian, all those guys. And man, I ran up against some tough cookies there.
Sure.
Those art directors in New York are, they're pretty in your face guys. And
they're rattlesnakes.
Oh yeah, and there was one of them. He just told me. He said, "This is what you." He said, "I like the angles that you shoot. I like your angle. I like your eye for light. You're just going to have to get a different subject that hasn't been overdone." And so I studied the magazines and decided, well, I'm going to just do wild turkey for a month. And so for 37 days nonstop. Every day at 4 a.m. I got up and went down on the river and I photographed wild turkeys. And with those images, after 37 days, I got 3 national covers in 1 month.
Wow!
And that started the ball rolling.
Was the early morning light something that attracted you? Because obviously, when you were trapping, you're up at the crack of dawn. So
yes.
Was that something that saturated light, watching it come over, the crest of anything? Was that the hook?
That was a lot of it. That and right at the last ray of evening and watching the top of those canyon walls, being lit up and then go into the shadows. And it just fascinated me. I was, and of course, at the time, I wasn't that great at composing or my exposures, and so I wasted a lot of chrome film. But I learned, and I would write down my mistakes. I would write down, this is what you need to do to improve, because I lived far from 125 miles from the closest city that had major photographers, and so I didn't have anybody to talk to. I just was out there by myself and just studied it.
That's what I was going to ask, if you had any mentors, but you had nothing. It was just you and your camera.
There was nothing, no one else.
Wow. That's hard. That's a real violent learning curve when you have nobody to bump off ideas and you're kind of, I'm sure, confused, like, why didn't this work?
Yes, many times. And I did a lot of black and white in the early years as well. I was always sort of fascinated with really high quality black and white with the good tones. And I actually had my own darkroom for several years and studied Ansel Adams and Fred Picker's zone system, and went all the way Cole light heads and Schneider lenses, and worked with fiber-based papers. But once I got into the magazine work, I realized that black and white was basically, a dead end road as far as realizing any income from it. So I pretty well put that away and just focused on chrome film.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so in those early years, it's so easy today to like find an art director, look somebody up. But in those early years, how are you making even those connections to anybody in New York?
I just looked at the magazines and found a phone number and just called them up and say, "Hey, I'm here. I'm in Texas. What can I do to be published?" I mean, and those guys would tell me, and I mean, I would submit, and boy, I mean, I would get them back in a hurry if it wasn't good. But if it was, they were honest about it, and they said, "Yeah, this is good stuff. I think we can use it." And of course, that just fed fuel on the fire. And by 1985, I was actually named by Sports Afield as one of 5 new breed of photographers in America.
And why do you think that was? What did they see?
Well, I'll tell you what. I had one photographer tell me, he stopped by here. He was a great guy, Tom Ulrich, just a wonderful guy. He's deceased now, maybe a year older than me, but he traveled around the country. He lived in Montana, but he came by to see me one time, and he said, you and about 5 or 6 others are considered what we all consider big shooters, and that means you shoot a lot of covers. Mm-hmm. And he said, I'm not. I shoot a lot of illustrative stuff, but he did a lot of it, and you don't shoot a whole lot of covers, but illustrative material is much easier I say much easier. It's not as difficult as shooting a real strong cover shot for a national magazine. Right. But that's what I focused on. I really, really wanted those covers because I felt like that would put me out there, and then I just had a big idea. I wanted to do good.
Right.
And I wanted to be a good photographer.
And when you're thinking covers, that means your composition's always got to be vertical, or at least you're thinking that way. And what they want, are they going to have space for all the header and all the type on the side? So yeah, all those things come into play when you're trying to go and look for big game hunting, which is the cover.
Yes. And of course now with digital, if you shoot a nice horizontal with a little bit of space above, they can crop it because digital is so much easier to work with.
Oh yeah.
But during the film days, man, if you had to shoot, if you're going to shoot cover, it pretty well had to be a vertical.
Yeah. It was very rare that somebody would say, okay, we'll make that exception. We'll crop in, lose some quality from that, from that horizontal. Geez. So, I mean, where were you in those early years with your gear? Because you have no mentor to say, hey, don't buy that camera, buy this lens, don't do that. So
I would go to a camera store in Amarillo, and I would stand around on weekends and wish, because, Nikon, Canon stuff, the high end was very expensive.
Oh yeah.
During those years. And so I realized that I needed to really get some good glass. That was very important. But I also wanted a motor drive on a camera. So I saved up while I was trapping and selling furs. I saved up and bought a Canon F1 with an MF motor drive. And then I ordered the big glass. I ordered a 500 millimeter Canon fluorite f5.6 lens. I mean, that thing was like a very rare item in Texas.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And that lens really, it was a great lens, but get a load of this. If you shoot any people today that shoots a long lens, they focus so close. Mm-hmm. You know, like I've got a Canon, my favorite long lens is a Canon 100 to 400 lens, and it'll focus down to almost inches. This 500 fluorite would focus minimum 33 feet.
Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the difference in lenses then and those today.
Yeah, absolutely. And that thing weighed a ton.
It was heavy. It was cumbersome, and it when it focused, it extended. I forgot how the proper terminology to describe that, but it was a helical or something like that focusing apparatus that the lens got longer.
Uh-huh.
And whenever you focused it closer, well, the lens got longer, and it got harder to focus. And in 81, whenever they came out with the new internal focusing lenses, the 500 4.5 Canon lens, low dispersion glass, mm-hmm. I immediately bought one of those. I sold that 500 fluorite to a man in Chicago, and yeah, he gave me what I paid for it.
Wow.
And yeah. And then I got that 500 4.5, and that thing was like stepping up many rungs of the ladder. It was incredible. It focused close. It focused easy. And I used it until the autofocus lenses came in.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I'm sure that thing lasted a good period of time for you because that's a major
I still
lens.
have one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still have one. I still have all my F1s, my F1Ns with motor drives. The 300 2.8s, the 400 4.5, 500 4.5, 17 rectilinear, 2.8 L lens, all of them. I got the whole battery.
You could open up a rental house at your place.
I could if someone wanted to use FD lenses.
If someone's in West Texas and needs a lens, this time get a hold of you. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Isn't it amazing? Like we talk about, the minimal focus, like that's a big deal, but it really was back then. All those lenses had major challenges.
Major. And a lot, nearly all of the zoom lenses were not very, didn't have good resolution.
No.
I mean, they were pretty sorry. Let's just put it quite frankly, they were pretty sorry.
Yeah, they were.
Oh man.
They were crap.
Yeah.
Like you would rather have shot with a 180 than any 70 to 300 because that 180 was going to be tack sharp.
Yep. I agree.
Yeah.
I had a 100 to 200 that was absolutely pathetic. But at the time, I couldn't be choosy. I couldn't afford, all the lenses I wanted, and I gradually was able to purchase them, and then all of a sudden autofocus came along and I had to change everything.
Damn them.
That's right.
What was your kit like back then, those early days when you're running around with a brick full of film? When you would go out, what was your setup?
If I was traveling, say for instance, if I was going to Canada or Alaska or something, like the Yukon Territory, I was up there shooting a story for Sports Afield in 1987. My camera gear would weigh around 75 pounds. I would carry the 400 4.5, 300 2.8, 500 4.5, a 28 to 80, an 80 to 200, and a 20 millimeter. And those were my lenses. And then I'd carry like 2 or 3 Canon F1N bodies with motor drives.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, I got on so many planes. I remember one day getting on going into the DFW airport, and I had all my clothes bag. I was going to be gone for 3 weeks, and clothes bag and all my camera gear. And I went from gate 1 to gate 39 walking.
Oh my!
Yes, when I got there, I was totally covered in sweat because I didn't want to. I didn't want to take up that little cart that comes by and picks you up.
Yeah, no.
But by golly, whenever I got back and landed at gate 39 and my flight was at gate 1, I jumped on that cart and grinned real big.
Yeah, you had no problem jumping on board.
Absolutely.
It's so okay. There it goes again with the advancement of technology. Like there was no photo roller bags back then. Nothing had wheels. Like it was all satchel.
Right.
Yeah, it was all, yeah, it was all satchel bags, and heavy steel, and it was brutal.
Oh, it was brutal. I had a customized bag made at the King Ranch Saddle Shop that carried 2 of my big lenses with camera bodies on them. Mm-hmm. So you can only imagine. Well, the 504.5 weighed, I think, 6 pounds, a 300.28 weighed like 4, and then you put 2 F1N with motor drives on in the bag as well, and you had a hunk on your shoulder.
Yeah. They have no clue.
You had a hunk weight.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, God. Yeah, it was a workout just getting from one place to another with your gear back then.
Yes, it was not fun.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, it's we've come a long way in technology and just how things have gotten lighter and smaller. And
you bet.
Yeah, boy, they have no idea how we could sound like those 2 old guys on a cul-de-sac telling you to stop running around. But surely enough, that's how it was back then. You had to be strong to carry that gear a long distance, especially some of the stuff you were shooting. You're out in the middle of nowhere.
Oh yeah, yeah. When I was in the Yukon, we were up there for 3 weeks, and you know you had to take batteries with you. And also I had to take a tripod.
Yeah. Yes.
And because you know you don't know what you're going to run against. The weather in the Yukon was sometimes terrible, and I could handhold stuff at a pretty slow shutter. But once you put a really big lens on there, you kind of had to watch it. Mm-hmm. I always prided myself shooting even a 500 by hand holding because I shot a lot of wildlife, and you can't carry a tripod around with you when you're shooting really, truly wild animals. I mean, not in a park, but when you're out there humping it after wild animals, you can't carry a tripod. So I learned early to handhold a 500 millimeter. And so, but I knew that I needed to take a tripod with me, so I took a Getso tripod to the Yukon, and that added more weight.
Right, that's pre-carbon fiber. That was a metal tripod.
Absolutely.
They wouldn't let you even check that on today in an airplane because it would be a weapon.
Oh no, it's things have changed.
Oh God, was that transitional period when going into autofocus lenses, was that good for you, or was it kind of difficult? Because there's a slowing down period when you're manually focusing and you look at your corners and you are aware of where your focal length and depth of fields are going to be. And then with autofocus, we kind of get into just like running and gunning.
Yeah. Well, by that time I had pretty well, I could read the photograph. I knew what I needed, and I didn't really have to think about it. All I did is it was composed and made sure my exposure was correct. Mm-hmm. I knew what f-stop to put it on for depth of field if I wanted f11 or 16, and of course that was relative to the lens that I put on. Longer lenses, if you wanted some depth of field, you had to have a little bit more f-stop and slower shutter speed. But by that time, whenever autofocus rolled around, I was pretty well familiar with, I could just throw up and shoot, and everything was pretty automatic.
Right. Yeah, because I remember going to autofocus and I thought, I don't know if this is making me better or not right away. I mean, the early autofocus was pretty rough. What we have today is outstanding.
Oh, it's unbelievable. See, I do a lot of, my next book is going to be on calling predators. It's the art of calling predators, and there is not a harder creature that I've ever seen in all my travels over 40 years, 45. I've never seen an animal any harder to photograph than a wild coyote or bobcat, and autofocus is a godsend.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet.
Because they're like a bullet. They're like a bullet coming at you. And when they come at a certain distance, they instantly stop, turn around, and they're gone.
Sure.
And so there was no time to really manual focus anything. And no, this autofocus is a godsend.
And they're unbelievably camouflaged. They're the same color as most of the landscape. They move like
Yes.
a hummingbird, and they have this ability to get real low. So now you can't even see them in the brush. God knows, I don't know how I've looked at your images, and I don't know how in God's green earth you've made some of those. My God, you're gifted.
Sometimes I wonder. Wow, that was luck.
It's and I saw that. I mean, with your animals from your trapping and hunting days, you use calling to like a model direct or get the attention of animals. That is unbelievable.
Yes. Yeah, I do that. That's my big deal is I call coyotes and photograph them. Used to I would use a rifle all the time, and that was important because I think it was Aldo Leopold once said that some of the greatest naturalists are old trappers, guys that had to really study the quarry that they hunted. And so I was one at one time, and it made me a better photographer. Wow. I can read sign. I can read body language. I know what the animal is going to do before he does it, basically. And I know when to move, when not to move. And all of this is occurring in seconds, in a matter of just maybe 5 or 10 seconds. And so it was those years of hunting were a blessing. And knowing how to put where to situate yourself.
Yeah.
In order, to take advantage. I tell you what, you find yourself being more or less thinking like a predator, and they're the prey. Mm-hmm. You get the sun at your back. You know how a hawk will hunt. They'll come in at a quail with the sun at their back, and the quail never sees them.
Right.
And so you put the sun at your back, you put the wind in your face, and you select a location where you suspect the predator will approach, which is the approach corridor, and then you blend in with your background. You make sure that you've got a good, a strong natural background, like a bush or a tree or a boulder, mm-hmm. and you become basically a predator and wait. Only thing is that you don't kill.
Right. You capture with your image.
You create images of the natural history of that animal, the look on its face, the body language. And I have photographed thousands of them, and every one is like a new day. I love it.
Wow. I saw that you were building just like if you're hunting, you were building blinds so you can shoot from, and you were just making the terrain like you're just your own little hut to capture images. That is unbelievable.
Yeah, I did that with wild turkey a lot, but with coyotes, you don't use a blind. You just walk into the landscape, onto the range, and you locate a tree or just a shrub, anything that'll break your silhouette.
Right.
And get the sun at your back, the wind in your face. And they don't always come from upwind. That means the wind from them to you. Sometimes they come crosswind. So you've got about 180-degree arc that you have to keep watching at all times. So there's a lot of peripheral vision action going on. If it comes up behind you, you don't worry about it because it's gone. You hear their feet, and then you hear them rushing away, and just hope they don't jump on your back, if you got strong enough. I had one bobcat jump on my back one time, and that's going to be the last time.
Oh, he got you, snuck up on you.
Yeah, he jumped and hit me in the shoulders and knocked me forward and pushed off and then took off running. Yeah, it scared me. Actually surprised me and kind of angered me, and a little bit, it spooked me a little.
I bet. Now, I got to ask, from one photographer to another, did you get any frames off?
Well, that day I was hunting.
Oh,
with a rifle.
Now that really pisses you off then.
Yeah, and he did get shot. I did shoot him because I was afraid he had rabies.
Uh-huh.
And so I would have to get send the head off if he scratched me, but luckily it didn't go through my coat.
Oh God, good. Okay, so that's just unbelievable. Like the preparation that you put into some of these, to make some of these images early on, when you're still trying to find yourself and you're trying to get images to New York or to people, and you're trying to find your way early in your career, and you're crossing over your trapping days and now to your images, that's just unbelievable. What a transition.
It is a transition. It really is. And, and I hold a fondness for a steel trap. I've got several of them, bear traps, lion traps, and wolf traps on either side of my fireplace. And on a cold winter night, I'll light up the fire and sit there, and I'll just still sit in wonderment and look at those traps and think, wow, those were some of the tools that taught me what I know today, where I could be the photographer that I am.
Right. Now, like every artist, there's transitional periods in their career, arcs and curves and shapes and turns. In the late 80s, you make a transition. You've kind of done a lot, and you decide, I'm going in a different direction.
Yes.
What was that? Was that scary? Was that needed? Was that a soul cleanser? What was that for you?
I was becoming bored with just wildlife, although wildlife basically paved the way for where I am today. Mm-hmm. I was becoming bored with it. It's the same old, the deer, the elk and whatever. And so I decided that I had more to offer, and that I wanted to expand into landscape, into culture, the various cultures in Texas, mm-hmm. and the sky. And I'll tell you, that was one of the best decisions I could have made. It so enriched my life. And probably was the reason, one of the main reasons that I was selected as the official state photographer of Texas, is because I didn't just focus on one aspect of Texas. I celebrated essentially everything that defined the state.
Right. I kind of I'm looking at like the curve. I'm looking at your images, and I'm looking at that time period. I would kind of correlate it, and tell me if I'm right or wrong. I could be totally off. Like that was kind of that late 80s. I think it was 88 you talked about. Like that's yes. Kind of like when if you started early in your career, like 12, 13, 14, shoot through high school, shoot through college, that kind of is where you're starting to, for me, it looks like you're out of college. Now I'm going to change, and I'm going to do landscapes and shoot the whole state of Texas. That was kind of like that birthing period for you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir, it was. Yeah. And it's really, what was difficult about it was that I went from primarily using a super telephoto lens, which, other than holding it, carefully enough to get really sharp images, because as I'd mentioned previously, I handheld mostly the big lenses, mm-hmm. To using a wide angle. And that is such a transition. Oh, yeah. That's an incredible, people don't realize it. They just say, well, a wide angle lens is a wide angle lens. But no, with a long lens, you don't necessarily compose, because you shoot strong and you have no background, no foreground. Your depth of field is minimal. But with a wide angle lens, when you slap one of those on, then it becomes, everything is basically in focus, mm-hmm. because you're not trying to isolate anything. You're trying to be all inclusive with your elements. And so then you have to start really thinking about composition and where to put these various elements to create this pathway through the frame that's going to interest the viewing public. And so you can shoot a mundane shot that's just there's nothing there. They just look at it and go, yeah, well, that's a piece of country. And then you can walk 10 feet over and have a boulder and a colorful bush and maybe a stump, an old cedar stump that's very colorful or ancient. And then that leads your eye into the distance. And then perhaps the sky becomes another element if you've got clouds and good light. But once I did, then a wide angle lens became my favorite lens.
Wow.
I loved a wide angle lens. I shot, like I mentioned, I shot everything from a 14 millimeter rectilinear. My favorite is probably today a 24 to 105 on my full sensor cameras.
Right. Yeah. It's, and you nailed it. The way you talk about it, when you're shooting with the long lens, it's all about compression. So there is no
Yes.
strong composition. But when you've got a 24 or 35 and you're shooting the land and you've got foreground now and you're trying to draw your eye to stuff, that's really the difference between, making photos and taking photos.
Yes. You have to become a creator at that time, a photographic creator, because if you don't have all these elements included, that takes the viewer's eye and gives it sort of a road trip through the frame, basically. And when you miss one of those stepping stones, well, then that's just a missing element that causes distraction.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. So how was that transitional period for you? You started shooting some models and some commercial work. Was that good?
The model work was good. I enjoyed working with the people, it's not something that, I wanted to continue doing, but I shot a lot of modeling portfolios for gals and guys some of them were headed to New York to some of the competitions there. Some of my images actually won some awards there at wherever they were doing their modeling stuff. That's 30 years ago.
Right.
But it was good because I still shoot. I still have to shoot images of people like in natural settings, like cowboys doing work and stuff.
Right.
And so I watch for those facial expressions that tell a story.
Yeah, and so that's a perfect transition from shooting these beautiful people to, before that you're shooting a coyote and you're calling him, or a wild turkey, right? Now you're shooting beautiful people, and you have to have people skills. You got to tell them, bring your shoulder towards me, raise up your this, do that. That transitions into now dealing with ranchers.
Everything has to be positive. You're not ever negative, although you want to be sometime.
Sure.
You have to be, wow, you're great, you're fantastic. All you do is just do this for me, and this is going to be super. And you can see them react positively to it.
Right.
But I know that not just probably a year or so back, I was shooting some a property for our real estate broker that my wife and I are with, and this guy was selling like 8,000 acres, and I said, now look, I need a good photograph, a portrait of you. And he said, man, and he's an older guy. He said, I don't like doing that. He said, I've never been in a situation where I've enjoyed having my portrait made. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, we're going to change that. So I said, let's walk out here to the barn. We walked out to his barn. I said, sit right there in the doorway in a sort of a shadowed area where there wasn't any direct sunlight. And I said, turn your face this way, and then you just look at me, and I'll start shooting, and I'll tell you what you need to do. And about 20 shots into it, I said, hey, we got it. He said, was that it? I said, that's it. He said, well, that wasn't bad.
Oh, that's great. But see, that's the difference between a pro. Like you've gotten your 10,000 hours in, you know what you're doing, and you can make people feel comfortable. Like that's the great thing. And what we do as photographers is that connection we can make with people. It's unbelievable, our power.
Yes, you really have to be positive with them and let them know that everything is going to be fine, and this is going to be painless, and they're going to like it. They're going to really enjoy the result, and it's amazing what you can get done and how you can touch the lives of people.
How was then the 90s for you? So you get into that. What is that transitional period in the 90s?
The 90s was when I started shooting, decided to go into book publishing.
Okay.
I was just trailing off shooting for the national magazines. I decided that I didn't really want to do that anymore. I think the last year I shot for them, I shot 3 covers for Field and Stream, and I said, you know what, I'm done. And so I had already been shooting these images, creating these images of roadrunners and recording the natural history of them. And a friend of mine, a college buddy of mine, Larry Butler, he's now Dr. Larry Butler, a PhD. He saw some of my work. He said, you need to publish these in a book. And so I thought, well, that's a pretty good idea. I'd already sold some to National Geographic book division, and had sold some to international magazines. So I thought, well, I'll do that, and it's still in publication today. That's 1990.
Wow.
That's 32 years.
Yeah.
And it's still in publication.
That is unbelievable. I've got it.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable. That is unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's, what was that?
Smithsonian magazine did a 10-page spread on that book. I published in Hortsu in Germany, Dostier, Germany, Wildlands in France, Korea Geo. Those Roadrunners have been published everywhere.
My Lord. Well, okay. Now here's another thing where, it's such a different period today than it was in the 80s and 90s. How were you keeping track of your film? If you're sending stuff out to New York and it's coming back and you want to make a book, what was your archive like?
Oh, that's, I had these filing cabinets, and I had folders in them, and I would label each folder. But what hurt in those days, you would send, say, a page with 20 images in it to a major magazine. They may keep them for 5 years.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have them. You wouldn't see them for 5 years. You'd even forget about them.
Uh-huh.
And then all of a sudden, one day you go, well, we used 3 that we paid you for, and here's the rest of them. I don't think we have use for them. Well, wow, I forgot I had them.
Right.
And digital is just really digitizing slides. I mean, now I don't have to worry about shipping them out, because I had some images that were totally ruined. I remember sending to one major magazine, big time magazine, and they cut one of my 35 millimeter chrome images. They cut it in 2 with a razor.
Oh,
they didn't mean to.
Oh my God!
The razor slipped. Yeah, when they were cutting the cardboard around the slide, the razor slipped, and they cut that transparency.
Oh,
and they made me another one, and then paid me $1,000 for the damaged slide. But
yeah. Those are those heartbreaking moments as a photographer that you're just kind of like,
oh yeah. Or whenever, another bad deal was a lot of them would immerse this film in some oil in order to do a drum scan.
Yes.
And you would get the chrome back, and it looked like you'd poured motor oil on. It was basically ruined.
Yeah.
Basically ruined.
That was always wonderful too. Yeah, that was brilliant. My best was when you send it out to editor or art director A, you don't know within that year they've now left. And then you're calling and they're like, oh, they don't longer live or work here. And it's like, well,
I saw this many.
Yeah,
I saw that many times.
Yeah, I gave them my film 6 months ago. Well, if it comes about, we'll give you a call. And you're just like, oh God. Oh, that tape is gone.
Or you send say 100 images to a new upstart magazine, and for 6 months you don't hear a word.
Yeah.
And then you call another photographer in another state that sent them images, and he said, "Oh, they went out of business."
Oh, yeah.
And so you make a phone call, 5 states away, and you get nothing. And so you go to the sheriff's office, and they get to the DA's office, and the DA calls their DA in that city, and that DA sends the sheriff out, and they go to his house and knock on the door and say, either you send the slides back to this man or we're going to arrest you. And you finally get your images back.
Oh, did that actually happen?
That actually happened.
Oh, my Lord.
Yes, that actually happened.
Oh, God. Yeah, that's a pain in the ass too. Thank God we don't have to go through that now. We just send stuff FTP Absolutely. Or something. Holy
Absolutely. I remember the first digital image. It was a scanned 35 millimeter slide, and I got a request from a magazine in France. And so I scanned this image and sent it to them. And they received it and paid me, and I'm going, wow, man, this is a dawning of a new day.
Yeah.
I still have my image. I got paid, and my image is in good shape.
Yeah. Nobody cut it. Nobody screwed it
Yeah.
up, dumped it in motor oil, and
Somebody poured motor oil on it.
and you guys are still in business.
Yeah.
And you're halfway around the world.
Yes. It's amazing.
Yeah, see.
There are some good things about the digital I really love, but I feel for those people who never really got to use Chrome. Negative film, not that big a deal, but Chrome was tough. Mm-hmm. You had to be on the money. It was so unforgiving, as you well know.
Oh yeah.
And the people who know nothing but digital, I think they're really missing out.
I bet you can close your eyes right now. You can think of a white table, a light table with Chrome on it, and how beautiful that is. When you see,
so colorful,
so beautiful. Right.
Yes.
Everything seems, the sunsets seem better. The blues seem bluer. Like everything was alive on a light table. It's such a magical
it was more
thing.
real.
Yeah.
It was really actually more real.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, one of the drawbacks in digital, and like I say, I love it, but I treat my digital imagery like I look at my images like I did film. I get the image, the raw, shoot everything raw, and I know it's going to be a little flat. Mm-hmm. I know it's not going to be as sharp as it could be. So I'll go in and I'll tweak it slightly, but I make it to where it looks like what I shot. So, but I don't pump it. I see way too many images that people go in and pump up, the contrast and all of that, the various, levels that you can fool with. And it really takes away from digital photography when you do that.
Oh, it does. It does. It's the sad thing is immediately how many times you see a photo today and go, is that real or has that been doctored?
Oh, and you and I know if it's real or not.
Yeah.
I can look at an image and I go, hey, that's not real. I've never, in my 71 years of living, I have never seen light like that. I'm sorry.
Yes. We don't have two suns. Yeah, we do not have two suns. So that's not possible.
Yeah.
I know. I just judged a contest and I actually had to tell the person running the contest, I said, I think this photo's been doctored because I don't think that mountain range exists. Like it just, it didn't look right.
Yeah. Whenever they put them in there, whenever they, when they clone it in there, that's wrong. That's not good at all.
No. But that's
a no.
Yeah. That's digital and social media. Everybody wants to try to one each other up, which is just really sad.
That is true. Now, when you are racing, dirt spots, it's on your sensor. I mean, that stuff is necessary. It's like the other day I was sending some images out and they were Chrome stuff. I had to send out, I think it might've been to Yeti, and they're doing a Father's Day thing. And they sent a photographer and art director and producer in here from Austin, and actually the photographer out of Montana, great guy. And it was a Father's Day thing, and both my sons are pilots, and I'm a pilot, so they wanted to photograph us, flying and getting in the plane and carrying Yeti gear in and out. But they wanted images of whenever my boys were small, and I had these images of them sitting in my lap when they were like 4 and 5 years old. And we're sitting in front of a 1946 old tailwheel aircraft that I used to fly. And obviously it's got dust specks all over it.
Sure.
And so, you're going to have to go in there and remove that stuff.
Right.
But as far as cloning and putting an extra person in there or something like that, I don't dig that at all. You
know what I kind of miss, and you touched it a little bit, is when we made black and white prints and then you had to go in with the brush and the dye and you kind of had to paint in the little spots. I kind of miss that. I don't know why. I just felt like that was kind of like the final touches to the actual print, just to remove the little spots. I always kind of
what I don't miss about black and white work is the yellow fingers all the time.
Yes, smell like Fixer.
That smell and the yellow fingernails and the yellow down to your first knuckle. Everything's yellow and shriveled up for 6 hours a day working in a dark room. I didn't care much for that.
I once was picking up my then girlfriend, now wife, up from work, and I had worked in the photo lab all day making prints, like 12 hours. And
oh, wow.
I don't know why I got pulled over, and I roll down my window, and that cop takes a step back, and he's thinking, is there a meth lab in your car? Like, he was like, what in the hell? Put your hands on the wheel. And I walked out, and I said, sir, listen, I have been in a photo lab, and like the cop's eyes were cross-eyed from my smell.
Yeah.
And the sad thing is I couldn't smell it. So I was like, oh, this has got to change. I can't do this. If I don't smell how bad I am. Oh my God.
I actually published one book in black and white. It was Contemporary Ranches of Texas, and I was commissioned to do that by a good man. He was actually a PhD, maybe even the chancellor or the president of a university over here in Abilene, Texas. And unfortunately, he passed away before the book was published. But it was all black and white, and I printed every one of the images myself on fiber-based paper, and used a hot press to dry the images. Mm-hmm. And so my last hurrah with black and white was one hell of a big party.
That's it. If you're gonna go out big, go big. Don't fool
go
around.
Big, man. Go big. Yeah.
Was that more work, being that it was a black and white, than any of your other books?
The black and white, I could shoot more in midday, so I could cover a lot of country because I could use red filter, a yellow filter, and get a little contrast so it didn't look so flat.
Right.
And so I had to cover so much country, so much of Texas in a short period of time, and cover so many ranches that it was necessary for me to. I just couldn't sit and wait at sunrise and sunset and then move to another ranch. I had to just keep on the move all the time. So in that respect, it was easier.
Okay.
Of course, the darkroom time was quite extensive. I had to spend a lot of time and hours and days and weeks in a dark room. And I forgot how many images they used, but it all turned out very nice imagery. I used some European warm base paper. I forgot the name of it now, but it was a European paper that gave kind of a warm tint.
Oh, nice.
And made really nice images.
Oh, see, that's the kind of stuff too. When was the last time you made a print?
A black and white print?
Any print. Like, that's the things we miss. When we were early in our career, we were making prints all the time, and you hang them in your house. But now it's kind of something it's kind of lost.
Oh yeah, I agree. If I need a print now, I just send it to Dallas or Lubbock. Yeah. And they print it up for me, and I go up there and grin real big and pay them and go home.
And your fingers aren't yellow, so it's not so bad.
My fingers aren't yellow.
now you touched on it. You got into a really great market shooting ranches when you were doing like the 3Ds, the Wagner Ranch. Like, that's when you can see when you were doing the models, how that translates to the cowboys and the ranches. Like, all of a sudden your images became like really epic. Was that a fun period doing those ranches?
It was. I enjoyed being around the cowboys because, as I'd mentioned earlier in the podcast, I lived on a ranch. I was raised on a ranch. My dad was an old-time cowboy from the Depression years. I knew the language of these guys. I appreciated the work they did. I knew good horses when I saw them, and I knew how to talk to these guys, and we got along just beautifully. And so, and they'd always say, well, we're going to be branding. We got 2 draggers, and we got 2 sets of flankers. Now, we're talking about a lot of work going on, and you can get run over very easily. And I told them I would be in the pen with them, and I'd say, look, guys, you don't worry about me. If I get run over, that's my problem. but I will get out of your way. But I need to be in here to get the image. And they didn't pay a bit of attention to me. And I just would duck out of the way to get the image. And everybody got along just wonderfully.
Yeah, those photos, like there's some branding photos and just some of the images. They're just beautiful. Like those are the ones that need to be printed and put on, anywhere you can, USA. They're just stunning.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that.
My God, I if you got a shopping cart on your website, I could pick out about a dozen I'd like to order.
Yeah. In fact, I've got to go photograph some branding here in about a little over a week up on the 460s ranch.
Oh my goodness!
And so I've got to. But now I tell you, Matt, what's really making things wonderful now. Of course, I've been a pilot for over 40 years, but drones. I've got two Mavic 2 Pros.
You gotten into it?
Oh, big time. I do so much real estate property photography, and drones are totally essential. And so I used to shoot and fly at the same time, which is sometimes pretty dangerous, a little sketchy, because you're always flying at low levels. You have the door off the plane. You've got the controls in your knees, and you're trying to focus. Or back in the film days, I would have to focus, compose, and shoot and fly the plane, maintaining an optimal airspeed so you won't, spin in. But now I just crawl in the pickup and turn the radio on and launch the drone. And I sit in there and listen to music, and I get great images.
Well, that's a bit different.
Yeah.
When did you start? When did you get into drones? When did you start to
several years ago. I have my commercial drone license, and it's going to be probably 5 years ago. I really got into drone work heavily.
Aren't they fun?
And I fly mine all the time. Like I say, I've got two in case I crash one, because a lot of my photography is maybe 400 or 500 miles away from home, and it is dependent on drones. And so if I hang a drone up and can't find it, well, I've got my second one. Right. That I can put out there, and then try to focus on finding the first one later.
Jesus, that is great. That you're constantly like pivoting and taking on those challenges. Because if someone who's a pilot might look at the drone and say that's a silly toy, but you're utilizing it as a tool in your toolbox. Absolutely. Which is smart.
Absolutely, it's totally essential now. Totally essential. Like, for instance, I go up into the Chinati Mountains sometimes in West Texas, and, they're like 7,000 feet, which is not high for mountains, but in Texas, that's a pretty good mountain.
Yeah.
And they're craggy. There's no trails. I mean, it's line country. I mean, it's tough country. And I can drive up on a Jeep road up to, say, 3,000 feet or 4,000 feet MSL, and then I can launch my drone, and at 1,500 feet of AGL above ground where I am, I'm at the top of the mountain.
Wow. And
I'm a mile away. And there's clouds coming in, pouring in, and I'm above the clouds. I can't go over 1,500 feet because, it won't let you.
Sure.
But I'm maxed out at 1,500 feet AGL. And so, and in the mountains in West Texas, a lot of time the clouds are down in the canyons. So I get to swing above the clouds and shoot these gorgeous shots with these canyons filled with clouds and the peak sticking up. It's fantastic.
What's your best drone photo you've made so far?
Oh my goodness, I've made so many images. That's a very difficult question.
There. If you're in the right place, and it sounds like that is a great place, you can make unbelievable images. That you can. That if someone would have told you in 1985, you'd have said, "No way in hell."
Oh no! It was just beyond comprehension. In fact, the other day I was shooting a property, and I flew over a rookery of great blue herons and some cottonwood trees, and I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to try to ease down and get a great shot of a nest with a great blue heron setting on it. And so very carefully, because you're kind of drifting down through the limbs, and you've got your drone set on obstacle avoidance to keep from really screwing things up good. And I got this fantastic shot poised right above a great blue heron nest with the compositional layout of the limbs and the surrounding habitat was just beautiful. I just worked it up a while ago and sent it to the client.
Wow.
Yeah, fantastic.
It's that kind of stuff that's just, it's a great tool to have. It's a fantastic tool.
It is, if you don't abuse it. And too many people abuse it. And of course that results in more FAA regulations and,
right.
You know, and you know, that's one thing you don't want to get into is a bunch of government red tape.
Right. You've got a lot of open land, right? You don't have any Air Force bases or anything, national parks.
No, I have nothing like that. I mean, I've got a small airport over here 10 miles away, but that's not controlled airspace.
Okay.
The worst situation I got into was I had to photograph a property near Waco. Well, I was bumping up against the controlled airspace. I was probably a half a mile from controlled airspace. And of course, if you're in controlled airspace, it won't even allow you to take off.
Right.
Your drone won't even start. And so, but I kept getting these warnings, you know, you're nearing. And so I'd pull away from it. Well, and it said, warning also, you may have radio interference. Well, by God, I found out what that was about. I launched that drone one morning and the light was perfect. And I parked it about a quarter of a mile away to get a really good still image. And all of a sudden I lost all contact with my drone for like 20 minutes.
Whoa, that's a long time.
It was like disappeared. And my biggest fear was, my God, it went rogue and it's landed down at a red light in Waco, Texas, down by the courthouse.
With your name on it.
Yeah, with my name on it, serial number, and here comes FAA. You know, I could just see it all coming. But I don't know where that drone went. I couldn't hear it. I drove over there. I knew exactly where it was. But I could not hear it. It said it was like 90 feet away, but I know it wasn't. And then whenever it got down to like 5 minutes or something, or like 25% power that remained, well, then it gave me the warning. It's going home. And all of a sudden, the drone crossed my screen. And when I got back to where I'd launched it, there it sat waiting for me. I don't know where it was hiding.
A mind of its own. Yeah.
It had a mind of its own for 20 minutes.
Oh, God, that's the longest 20 minutes of your life trying to scan in the sky for that little teeny sparrow.
I'm telling you, I was scared. I did not want that FAA on me.
Well, all of a sudden, the worst case scenarios start going through your head.
Oh, sure.
Like, how far can it go? It's, you know, it could be landing anywhere. It's going to hit a little kid in the playground. It's going to crash into an airplane, whatever.
Right.
Oh my God.
You know, I don't do daring things with it. You know, I'm strictly professional.
Mm-hmm.
I may, you know, in mountainous terrain, these big ranches, I'll fly and follow the cowboys trotting at sunrise and get right down next to them and just creep along beside them and get these great videos. But as far as doing stupid things, I do not. In the same way with an airplane, you know, I never did really get into doing crazy things in an aircraft. I think the worst thing I did 3 loops one day and made myself so sick I couldn't hardly land. But,
Wyman, that's brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you're not flying against zeros out in the Pacific. There's no reason to do 3 loops.
That's right. But I just wanted to do 3 loops in a row without stopping. I was in an open cockpit aerobatic bi-wing aircraft, and I climbed up to 6,000 feet. I had a Canon F1 duct taped to the wing above me, pointed at me with a 20 millimeter lens, preset exposure, mm-hmm. with a shutter release ran down through the front cockpit, in through the firewall, and taped to my throttle. So when I would go up and do a loop or an Immelman, well, I'd take pictures of myself.
Oh my!
And God. I did 3 in a row, and tit-tat-toe, boy, I was sick. And that plane lands at 90 miles an hour. So I thought, man, I don't know if I can get this thing on the ground. But I finally got it down, and I fell out of that thing and just laid on the tarmac, just lay there, just so sick I was going to throw up everywhere.
If the good Lord was an FAA inspector, he would have been upset more with the duct tape than your 3 loops.
Yeah, he would.
Oh God, my dad used to work at the FAA, and that was one thing that, he hear that, he would have lost his mind, because people always just think like, I can make it work until it falls out of the sky.
Yeah. Now I actually had a monopod that ran into the front cockpit, and then I had it taped to some structure in the front cockpit because it was just me and the plane. And then the monopod was run through the handhold in the wing, and so the camera wasn't going anywhere.
Right, you over-engineered it.
Yeah, I was engineering it really tight, and the pictures are just totally razor sharp.
That's what I was going to say. Okay, the real question: how great are the photos?
They're really cool. I got one shot of me coming out of an Immelman, and the world is like, the horizon is crossways on my tail, and it's just sharp as a razor.
All right, you got to send me one of those for the podcast promotion, because that sounds.
Oh, I will.
That sounds great. I mean, but see, that's what's we are so lucky that we get to do, and create pictures like that, and you have that of yourself. Because if you're roofing, and doing tar in Waco, you don't have cool pictures of yourself like that. But we are so lucky as artists to be able to capture and make pictures. We're so lucky.
Absolutely.
Oh,
absolutely. I count myself lucky every day.
Well, you got an unbelievable phone call in 1997 that a lot of people don't get. I don't know of anybody that else has. And
no, sir.
Yeah, and I met the man the governor at the time. He was the president, and I should have asked him who his favorite photographer was when I met him in 2001. But talk about this unusual phone call you get.
Yeah, it came from Austin. I forgot. I might have been might have been in my pickup. Probably using a bag phone at the time. That was the early days.
Yeah, those good old days.
Yeah. And so I just said, hey, Wyman, can you be in Austin at the Capitol building like on Tuesday? And this was like Friday. And I said, well, yeah, I guess so. But why? And they said, well, you've been designated the state photographer of Texas by the 75th legislature and George W. Bush, who was the governor at the time. And so I drove to Austin, changed into a suit and I don't normally wear a suit.
I know, but hold on. Now, once you hang up, are you thinking like, did someone pull your leg? Because that's an unusual request.
Well, no, it was pretty official. It was from a state representative's office.
Okay.
In the Capitol building. And he said, he did specify, I said, now you need to have a suit on. So I did have a suit. And when I got to the parking lot in Austin, I changed into my suit and walked in the Capitol. And then they took me to the legislature floor, and then I went up to the podium, and then they read off whatever they call those things. It's all this reading, and then the Speaker of the House would use his gavel, and so that's when it occurred.
That is so.
And then George W. Bush came in. I was led into an office, and he walked in, and sat down and signed it for me. And I got a picture of Governor Bush, then Governor Bush, and myself. Since then, I've done 2 or 3 shoots for President Bush at his ranch there in Crawford, and actually had dinner with he and Mrs. Bush, my wife and I both, and we just had a grand time. He's a really personable fellow when you get him just sitting at the dinner table and really shooting the bull.
Yeah, no, I was doing the College World Series in June of 2001. So he's new. He's just been in office 4 or 5 months, and he throws out the opening pitch. As you know, he was part owner of the Texas Rangers. He's a huge baseball guy. So he throws out the College World Series first pitch, and they lock down. I was supposed to be down on the field, but they locked down the press box, so I couldn't get down. So I make the picture from the press box. They lock it down. I can't go down. He comes up. The security tells us, don't move, let him make his way through, and then you can. And I don't know why he stopped. He walked right up to me. He said, wow, you got a lot of camera gear. I said, yes, sir, I do. He just reached out. Yeah, he just reached out, shook my hand. He says, how's your day going? I said, great, until I can get down on the field. And he goes, well, don't let me hold you up. And he patted me on the back, and then off he went. And you could see all these security kind of like, you're not supposed to be moving, but I'm like, the boss told me to move.
That's right.
Yeah, he was a kick. He was great. He stuck around for the whole game and watched it, had a time.
Yeah. Well, I think it was that day, because I had been around him. He actually came to a book signing of mine and Andy Sansom's book in 1996, I believe, when he was governor. And he came to that book saying, I don't know why, but the PR lady came up to me and she said, now, the governor wants to talk to you. And so I said, well, why? And she said, well, he just wants to talk to you about your work and everything. Well, he came up with his with two highway patrolman troopers as his bodyguards, and just shot the bull with me for a little while. Of course, I was dressed in jeans and my high-top boots and everything, my typical attire. W.C. Russell boots. And so I didn't see him, and he left. Well, then Carl Rove and I were friends because I'd photographed him when I was doing a book on quail hunting. And he said, you need to come to Austin sometimes. I'll introduce you to some people you need to know. Well, then he had a party at his house and he called me. So I said, yeah, I'll come. And so then Governor Bush was there along with a bunch of federal judges. And I talked to the governor at that time. Well, that's the only two times I ever saw him. Well, whenever he came out in 97 to sign this decree, the first words out of his mouth was, he said, I didn't even know you owned a suit. And I went, my God, he remembered. Of all the people that he gets to see, he remembered that I don't wear a suit, hardly ever. And I wear my boots, my jeans, my Wrangler jeans, and just a shirt. And he remembered that, and that impressed me.
That is impressive. That is impressive because God knows you know, he meets even at that time, he's met thousands of people when he was in Congress and governor and running the business and everything. And for him to remember you like that is impressive.
Oh, yeah, that's very impressive.
Good Lord.
Very impressive.
So what do you get with that? Do you get like a belt buckle or like, do you get
no, you get kind of an award thing. And it's a prestige deal.
Sure.
You know, it's prestige. It's and it states that basically it's forever until I pass. Wow. And so I'm very honored. I feel very honored to be able to, and I never use it. I don't go up and say, hey, I'm a state photographer of Texas. I just say, hey, I'm Wyman Meinzer, blah, blah, blah. And I take a picture. But I never use it and drop names or anything. But a lot of people do pick up on it and they go, oh man, you're the state photographer of Texas. Yeah, I know. But I'm just a regular guy with a camera.
You are, sir. You are. Boy, I tell you, I bet you can give a look that can change people's mind real quick.
I don't know.
Make a coyote run the other way.
For sure that.
Okay, so I want to ask you. I want to ask you these words, and I want you to tell me what they mean to you, because your background and your love of everything you do, I want to throw these words out, and you tell me. So, what does family mean to you?
Well, it just means, I don't know, love for your sons and brothers and mothers and fathers and sisters, and just cohesiveness, solid upbringing.
Yeah, see,
basically.
That right there should be tattooed onto every Marine's arm, because that's like perfect. That's just unbelievable. Okay, so what does Texas mean to you?
Oh, Texas, I was telling, I had some German filmmakers here this morning from.
Oh, that's all.
They're doing a film on Texas, and I've helped them for about 4 days, and so they asked me the same thing. What does it mean to be a Texan? And it's just a source of pride. We're independent, very independent-minded people for the most part, especially those of us who was raised in open country, big country, ranch country, where we take great pride in the state of Texas, the Lone Star State. And we're a can-do people. I can do. I've proven to myself, as starting out as a cowboy and then studying to be a wildlife biologist and then to a professional predator hunter and eventually into a photographer that has been elevated to the level that it is today, whatever that is. I'm very proud of it. But it shows that, to me, a Texan generally feels we can do it. If we set our minds to it, we can do it.
Ah, that's good. What does photography mean to you?
Oh, it's documenting to me, okay? I see so many interesting things. I mean, on private ranches, archaeological, paleontological, historically, contemporary. I see all these different things. And to me, photography is documenting those rare moments that some of us get to observe to share with those who will never get to see them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
what I love about it.
Yeah, it's such a
and recreating that moment. And say, you know as well or better than me, you're not going to point your camera unless you feel very stimulated about that moment, that instant. And when you get that, when you create that instant on sensor, on film, I can go back to that image and I can have that feeling of inspiration, that feeling of happiness and, energy that a great image offers or a great scene. And I get to relive it time and time again, and I get to share it with others.
Yeah. Yeah. How has your process changed now with digital, or just in your age compared to when you were doing it in the late 70s, early 80s? How is your process different?
Process meaning?
Just in making the images.
Oh, I treat it the same way as I did film. When I used to do it in the first started in the 70s.
Okay.
I mean, I take time. I compose. I don't go out at 10 o'clock when I could go out at 7. I go out at 7 instead of wait until the light gets too bright. I want to be able to look at that raw image and say, wow, that was a light I saw. It's a little bit flat, but I know that I can just tweak it to that, what really inspired me to trip that shutter.
Yeah,
and so the process really hadn't changed. It's all about composition. It's all about light. It's all about getting that great color and creating that image that's very stimulating and provides so much energy to make you want to go out and do it again.
What do you think the best image you've made? What's your favorite?
Oh, wow.
And it's always kind of easy. I ask this of people and they go, oh, wow. But let's say your brother-in-law wants a print. What print would you make?
Mm-hmm. Wow. Man, that's a tough one because there's so many different subjects. There's weather, there's wildlife, there's people, there's, landscape. You would have to break it down into one category.
Last 5 years.
Or in the last 5 years. Some of my most memorable images are with a drone.
Really? Wow. That's cool.
I mean, in fact, I sent a video clip with the German guys today, Daniel and Marcus. They're headed on down to Austin to do some filming. And it's just a tremendous shot of a line of about 10 cowboys going into the rising sun early one morning, which is typical on big ranches. Mm-hmm. You start just at sunrise, and we're talking about 100,000 acre ranches. And I was flying that drone along beside them, and the sun was in the photograph, and those guys were in a perfect straight line going right into that sun. And I was sort of off to one side and slightly behind them to where the drone could get everybody in the photograph. So they were sort of diagonal across the frame. It's an awesome photograph.
Wow. All right. So here's the heartbreaker. What is the one you missed you wish you could have back? Maybe,
oh, man.
Maybe a bad roll of film, something breaks in the spool.
No, it was my screw up.
Yeah.
It was my screw up. When I was shooting the book on coyotes back in 1993, I was in a blind, like you were talking about, made out of stumps and cow chips. And I'd been in there for hours waiting for these coyotes to come to this dead cow or a dead horse. I can't remember. And this alpha male coyote came in, and there was a submissive coyote there before the alpha male got there. And so they squared off, and the alpha male came right at the camera because the other coyote had its butt turned toward me. And he came right at the camera, 500 millimeter lens, and I was focused right on his face. And I grabbed that shot, and before I could even think about it, I opened the back of the camera, and I ruined that. Yes. I was down to like number 30, 36, and I was so excited before I hit the rewind button, I flicked the camera back open, and it ruined that roll of film.
Oh.
I will forever. I just closed the camera and dropped my head, and I almost cried.
I'm tearing up now. Because it's such a pain. I know that feeling. And all of a sudden you're looking and you want to see the back of the shutter blades, and you're staring at brown film.
Yes. You're staring at that film and you go, I blew it.
Yes.
I knew better and I blew it.
Yeah. Why are there sprocket holes? It's like, oh my God.
Yeah. Where'd those come from?
Shit. Oh God, that's painful, sir. Oh God. Yeah. We've all been there once or twice, and it happens, and you just kind of,
yeah.
Damn, and it's weird. It was because you were so. If it was just images you kind of made, and then you go to rewind, but you were so excited and caught up in the moment, literally your brain got away from you.
Yes. I mean, it was going to be an actual lifetime photograph. I'd been in there for 2 or 3 hours, freezing cold, and finally the moment came. And I blew it by opening the back of that camera.
Oh man,
yeah, that hurt.
Now you mentioned it earlier about the boots. You've got boots. How cool is that?
Yeah. I'm on the pro staff of W.C. Russell out of Berlin, Wisconsin, and they're wonderful. I've worn these boots. I've worn out about 10 pair since 1987. And so, yeah,
that's bad. That's just badass to have your own clothing line, your shoes. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Ansel Adams didn't have clothes. He had a martini, but he certainly didn't have boots. Minor White didn't. Ed Weston, none of the guys.
Yeah. When I ordered the first pair, I remember Ralph, the gentleman who owns the place. He said, now that's an old style of boot dating back to the early 20th century. And I said, that's exactly what I want.
Oh,
and he said, okay, I'll put it for you.
They're beautiful boots. I mean, in the research when I was looking, there's that shot on your website with all the old boots, and you're wearing the one in the middle. And it's just, those boots look so comfortable.
They are. They're very, very comfortable.
I mean, and I bet you can be on your feet all day, and they pay off at the end of the day, walking around in some of that rough terrain.
And they support my ankles. I tore my ankle, I believe my right ankle up when I was in college playing a pickup game in basketball. Just ripped all of the tendons loose, or the whatever the muscle is that holds cartilage there.
All of it. You tore it all.
I tore it. I mean, that thing turned black and blue in within 2 minutes. And so they support my ankles as well. And then whenever I'm walking in cactus and rough terrain, they protect my shins from cacti and from rocks and boulders hitting them and things like that.
Yeah, I see that they're 15 inches high. That's a good cover.
Yeah.
But see, I'm only 5'7". I got a 28 inseam. That would go up to my thigh. There's no way.
Yeah.
I couldn't wear that boot. I look like a go-go dancer in the Whiskey a Go-Go or something.
That's good.
There's no way I could pull that off. You, on the other hand, can pull it off, sir. How are you doing? Like we mentioned, I saw the story like Fessel did and Yeti. Like at this part of your career, how are you doing with the recognition that you're getting? You've been on podcasts and they're doing stories of you. Is that kind of is it interesting? Is it odd?
I'm honored. I'm very honored, and I try to accommodate everybody. This stuff does not go to my head at all. I mean, I'm just a regular guy. I like to go out and drink a beer or a glass of wine in the afternoon. I drive an old pickup. I've got a couple of pickups and Toyota with 240,000 miles and a Chevrolet Z71 with 331,000 miles on it. And I'm just a regular guy, but I enjoy creating images. And I've been pretty successful at it. And I appreciate the interest that people shows. I sincerely appreciate it. And I consider it an honor. Somebody walks up to me at a store and says, I know you. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I love your work. I consider that an honor. And I stop and I talk to everybody.
Oh, that's nice. See, that you are everything I hope you were going to be in this interview and more. Like all my research and like this was I could barely sleep last night. It was like Christmas Day and I was 7 years old trying to get to this podcast at 1:00. Like I wanted this to happen so bad. And I was joking like with my wife saying, this might be the first podcast I do where I cry because hearing, well, a lot of it, it's, hearing you talk, it's like my dad had that Texas accent and then he lost it and he'd been to Colorado and California. But when he would go home or he'd go into Texas, it would immediately come back. And so I felt like in this podcast, it was like talking to my dad and like, or listening to his accent. And I was like, oh, I told my wife, if I can get through these, hour and a half, 2 hours without tearing up, it's going to be a miracle.
Well, I appreciate it. I really do. I'm honored by everyone who appreciates my work and I hope I can continue to do that.
Yeah. You are making beautiful work. And I mean this in the most sincere way, like still at 71, you're still killing it. Like a lot of guys slow down, like they get to the late 50s and the 60s and they're slowing down. And what you're doing is a lot of like, it's real work. You're out in a ranch, you're out in elevation, you're climbing. I mean, you're not like sitting back at all. You're still producing unbelievable high quality work. And that is.
Yeah, I can't sit still. I really can't. Every day when I wake, I'm thinking, what can I do today that's going to be an adventure, no matter how small it is, if it's a major life changer. I just want to be able to accomplish something by the end of the day, and I love it. It's in my soul, my heart and soul. I grew up that way, and I guess I'll keep doing it until I get called on that last great ride.
Are you a grandfather?
Yes, I am.
Oh, because you have to be. You would be the world's greatest grandfather. You would be so much fun.
Yeah, I take my youngest son has 3 children, and 2 of them love to fly, and so I take them up in the plane, and we fly around for like an hour or some morning over this old rough country in this ranch country, and they just love it. I let them fly the plane, and then I'll take. If I say, okay, we need to land, and I'll go ahead and take it from here. Stay on the controls with me, and so you'll know what it's like to land an airplane. And so they stay on the rudders and the stick with me, and we come in and make a landing, and they just love it.
That's awesome. See, you're absolutely the best. This was more than I ever could expected. Sir, you are a hero. I can't thank you enough for this time today.
You're very kind.
No,
thank you very much.
This has been an absolute pleasure. All the recognition you get, you deserve that and more. The images that you're making are outstanding. I'm so glad we were able to do this.
Well, I'm honored that you want to talk to me.
Oh,
Thank
please.
you very much.
You're making me want to move to West Texas if I could talk my wife into it.
Come on.
If not, at least I'm going to use some of my Southwest miles and come by and buy you a beer at least, for the love of God, man.
There you go. Absolutely.
I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
You bet, man. Thank you very much. You're a kind person and a great guy.
I appreciate it. Thank you. We'll talk soon.
All right.
Thank you for listening to my conversation with Wyman Meinzer. If you enjoyed this episode, please click the like button and become a subscriber to the podcast. Remember to follow the Just a Good Conversation podcast on Instagram, and you can find all of our past shows on the website at justagoodconversation.com. Thank you for listening.